Recording, go for it.
All right, welcome everyone to our October Impact Hour with the National Social Enterprise Alliance. I'm super excited to be here. We have some great guests to talk today about how do we continue forward in the impact work that we do and the positive social impact that we're making in our various organizations in such a unprecedented time. I know we're all probably tired of hearing that phrase, but it is, we're still in it, right? So how is everyone here to keep going? So in no specific order, I'm just gonna kind of go down the list that I have. I'm super excited, and it's always great when you ask people, will they show up? And they do. So thank you everyone for being here. Very happy to have you. We have Will Radford, president at AMPM Solutions Incorporated, also owner of Local Distro. And it's a really great longer version of the name that Will's going to unpack for us in a little bit. I know you will, right, Will?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have Bettie Kirkland, executive director at Project Return, who's doing some great work with our veterans, getting everybody where they should be. Speaking of work, we have Karen Williams, who is CEO of MinTech Agency. She's doing great work in diversity and inclusion and tech and staffing companies with really smart, diverse candidates. And then last but definitely not least, we have Edward Henley, who is the principal at Pillars Development, does a lot of infill work. He's an awesome developer, good person, good human. Everybody here is just good humans. So I'm really glad to have you all here. And I think we'll loop back around and let you all introduce yourself. So here's how we do it. Basically on most of the meetings I do, I throw it to you. You give your minute or two intro about who you are and why you're here and what makes you awesome and how you're pivoting, and then throw it to somebody. Throw it to one of your other three people. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to start with Bettie. Tell us about you, Bettie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bettie Kirkland. I'm sitting over here across from the Howard School. So if you come vote, wave at me from across the street. I run Project Return. We are a 41-year-old nonprofit organization here in Nashville, doing the work of successful new beginnings for people coming out of prison and coming back to our community. I've been here for 10 years, and I'm a recovering lawyer and a mother of 20-somethings. And so anyway, I'm just pleased to be here and happy to be on this call. Oh, and we run 3 social enterprises, which is why I talk to Dawn sometimes.
I like how you just slid in. Oh, we run 3 social enterprises. What are your 3 social enterprises?
So glad you asked. Our oldest one is a staffing company, but I hasten to add a good staffing company. We are, in many cases, people's best first job after prison. In 2018 alone, we hired 340 people transitionally immediately after incarceration. Our second social enterprise is an affordable housing company. We preserve affordable housing 1 duplex at a time, rehab it, make it prettier, and rent it to people who are successful on the other side of prison. Our third and most recent is a property solutions company doing landscaping and commercial clean, and now disinfecting. More later.
Look at that. I think there's some symbiotism with some of the people here.
Okay, good.
So that sounds like some conversations later. Who do you want to throw it to?
Ed.
Thanks, Betty. I appreciate that. Edward Henley. I'm the principal and project executive at Pillars Development. Been in the land use and real estate industry for approaching 10 years now. I've owned and operated Pillars Development, my own firm, since December of 2013. And since our inception and primarily still to this day, a large portion of our work is managing projects for other people. We've actually had the great ability to build a lot of the beautiful things that the city of Nashville has done for itself as a city. A lot of civic projects, acting as a project manager, owner's representative for a lot of Metro's agencies, as well as some quasi agencies, and doing projects that are built for everyone. That's something I always like to tout. Whether it's the park system, whether it's fairgrounds, we're working to create things that the city of Nashville will enjoy for many years. And most recently, in the past 2 years, nearly 24 months, really placed a focus on returning to our original purpose and our roots, which is to do infill and neighborhood scale development with a focus on affordable housing, as well as a mix of uses, creating vibrant neighborhood nodes, the commercial type of activity that really makes neighborhoods thrive, not just creating housing. Not that Nashville doesn't need a lot of affordable housing right now, but that's just part of the puzzle. And just wanting to create enjoyable communities, put flagship types of projects as well as businesses in communities that really have either had historic disinvestment or those that just truly haven't met their potential yet. And happy to join the conversation here and happy to expound upon that. I'm gonna pass it to Karen. Try to get all the ladies as fast as I can, right? Southern gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Ed. I'm Karen Williams, and I am the founder and CEO of MinTech Agency. We are a diversity tech recruiting company. And so we focus on Black and Latinx and women, filling those roles for our clients as quickly as possible, but finding the right talent. And so pivoting during COVID has definitely been challenging. So me as a company, we had two challenges that came up, right? So we had COVID and the pandemic, and we also had the racial disjustice that went on that really exploded here over the summer. So the pandemic slowed us down, and then the racial injustice boosted us back up. So we had more of a roller coaster. So we're dealing with that. So yeah, I'm just glad to be here to share our story and, see how we can, give some advice or help. And I'm going to throw it to Will.
Well, hello, my name is Will Radford, and I am the founder of AMPM Solutions Incorporated, the owner of the local distro, and the founder of Nia House Montessori School. So I work in 3 different sectors, but they all are combined by passions that I have really for community and the development of communities in the education space, in the economic space, and then also in the entrepreneurial space. So the local distro is about entrepreneurship and helping foodpreneurs and entrepreneurs who are doing the work to establish companies, grow those companies, and move and scale by shaping the distribution element. AMPM Solutions is an asset management and project management company that really focuses on structuring public-private partnership deals. I'm working with a client now who's building a hotel in the city. It's a municipality working with private dollars. And that's the expertise that I lend to most projects with the background in engineering. In the late 90s, I studied at Tennessee State University, architectural engineering, and I have a passion for the built environment, but leverage it in structuring deals more so than executing construction or even architecture at this point. But I'm excited to be here. I think in the 3 different businesses that I am either owner, founder, or co-creator of, COVID has required us to pivot in a lot of ways, but I think it's also allowed us to recast vision as a result of these changes. And so we're excited to listen and also share on how that's happening for the sake of increasing the opportunities primarily for North Nashvillians. Most of the business that I create is in North Nashville and is looking at how to bolster the economic and the human intelligence that's already here.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think, one, it's really amazing to be amongst what I like to call money-making hippies like myself, right? We're all doing the good work, smart people doing the good work. So that's very exciting. And it's also exciting to hear people who, like myself, don't want to just be in one space. We like to do multiple things, right? So that sounds very awesome to me. So a question as we think about, I know that we probably spend a lot of time watching these panels and all of these Zooms and these things, and we all want to know kind of what's been the biggest effect that COVID this time has had on the people that you work most closely with, right? So not necessarily just your business, but how has it affected the people that you serve? Because each of you on here serves a community, right? Or 2 or 3. And then, so how has it served the people? How has it hurt the people that you serve or affected the people that you serve, maybe positively? And then how has it affected your industry? Let's see, I will start with Karen. What about that?
The people, I will start with my candidates more so they are, if they haven't been let go of a job, then they're not really looking to move, right? So that makes it harder for me to fill a role because you have the uncertainty of what is really gonna go on, when are kids really gonna go back to school, is the flu season gonna, rehash this all over again? And so that has been the biggest thing for me. For people that do want to try a new role or do something different, they can't really because they are, already settled in a role. And for my clients, a lot of them had to pull back on filling roles. They've had to pivot what they were doing on their projects. They had to stop some projects. So that was really the main thing with me. It was people just not being certain on what was going on. Now you have work from home, and companies are deciding if that's going to be a good move, because, the bigger companies are doing it. So the smaller companies are wondering if that's going to be, a positive thing for them. So it's a lot of, thought process in pivoting and trying to figure out what's going to work best. I can say for one thing, like my husband's job, they made a whole lot of changes, and as if COVID would be around forever. So they're redesigning the offices, and so it just gets you to thinking, are the decisions that we're making for right now, or are they going to be long term? So I think a lot of companies are maybe taking COVID as if it's going to be a forever thing. Like I don't think we'll forever need to be 6 feet apart, like at work and everything. So it's just a lot of changes that people are making. They're making them really quickly because they want to be able to get back to work. And so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I guess we'll figure out a year from now if they're going to have to remove and change things again. So I think that was the biggest thing. Companies, our clients, having to pull back on hiring and then making other decisions on how to protect their employees when they come back to work. And then employees deciding, do I want to take a chance and start a new job, relocate and all that. So it's been a lot of pivoting and changing for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Bettie, in the face, and pin that real quick. I think I said veterans when I introduced you. I meant individuals that were formerly incarcerated. In that space, with things like recidivism, how has this time affected your population, your client set, the people that you work with and serve in your industry?
I saw that question in advance, and it's a very hard thing to describe because we would always, before COVID, talk about just the terrible devastation and destitution of coming out of prison to nothing, having the clothes on your back, no ID, and a few dollars, and that's it. And so then COVID hits, and we couldn't have imagined it, but it's harder, it's worse. And so it came out to a wasteland. It gave us an opportunity to just be more prominent, I guess, for the people that we exist for. So that was helpful. But I think our hearts just have to go out to folks who are being put out from a cage into this. And employment is clearly the number one predictor, if you will, of their bright new future. And so having employment kind of cut out at the knees was just a terrible thing for folks. And so we had to, I would say as an organization, we didn't know it at the time, but the big question that COVID presented in a way to an organization like ours was, can you do this remotely? And so probably the last 2 weeks in March, we came up with our answer, which was no. So then like just saying, how are we going to get it for these folks? How are we going to get it for our organization? How do we kind of concurrently push on our safety and push on our frontlineness at the same time, and not go all safety and forget our frontlineness, or go all frontline and put ourselves, at risk, knowing that we're serving people coming straight out of the hottest hotspots. The prisons in Tennessee have an infection rate about 800+% higher than the general population in Tennessee. So it's dramatic and it's real. And so yeah, now I can't even remember what the question was, but it's abundantly harder, as hard as it was before, for the people we serve.
Wow. 800%. That's overwhelming. Doing the work that I do in the consulting space of pre-development and development and social impact and social impact strategy, I get to work with awesome people like Ed, and Edward with Pillars Development, and thinking about other areas. How do we look at projects? How do we expand things and growth? And so he and I can specifically say that one of the projects we were working on just took forever. It just kind of took a life of its own for COVID. But Edward, I'll let you talk a little bit about maybe your projects and how has that affected the things that you're doing. And then Will, you'll piggyback and add in your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think that there's two different paths, and I'll try to cover them both quickly. I think one path is as I highlighted, doing projects for others, thinking about municipalities, civic spaces, where a lot of these projects are funded by government dollars. And then also you have a shift from new shiny capital growth to more of a sustained reaction to a public health crisis. And then which then in turns an economic crisis, and particularly in Nashville, that came on the heels of a natural disaster, right? So, you know, it just kind of, the hits kept coming. And so from in that space, I think it has just been continually a deprioritizing of the types of things that I'm particularly, myself and my firm, help bring to fruition. So from an aspect of from a job security standpoint with my staff and my team, and just being able to have that level of certainty that you've programmed out ahead. When you think about real estate development, you know, it's a very long timeline for a lot of projects to come to fruition. Not necessarily any different whether the project is small, you know, or if it's extremely large. You have a lot of time that goes into making things just become a vision that you can work to create a reality for. And then on the other spectrum, thinking about the social impact and being a developer and working in communities at a neighborhood scale, it was really difficult, largely because this time period for me was intended to be spent working to grow into markets, working to have conversations with potential developers, honestly start a version of an investor type of fund and an investor type of group, and then also to seek the capital that marries to these types of projects. And as many of you know, when you're dealing with relations, I think, you know, Betty kind of said it, our answer is no, we can't do this virtually or remotely. Trying to do that, trying to build relationships, trying to tell people to invest in things that aren't traditional versions of investment in the middle of a crisis virtually, regardless of what the crisis is very hard to do. And, you know, unfortunately, there were times and projects that we were invested in and, you know, things hit at the wrong time and, you know, you lose money because you have people, every transaction has two sides, right? You have people that want to sell and you have an interested party that wants to buy and invest. And you get the seller, you get that process going, you have that kind of moving along. And then as you try to talk to the investor or the buyer group, they're reacting real time to what's going on and the level of uncertainty that comes with not knowing if your core business, if you're an investor, right, is going to be in jeopardy, or if you are just an investor for your main job or main occupation. It's, well, what strategy, right? You're back to the drawing board, just in the sense of doing what's prudent for you. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And so you kind of have those avenues that you had planned to take, kind of closing off to you as you're working through things. And so for me, it just created a level of determination that you're going to have to figure out how to work through the new norms, and then realize that even though the past that you might have thought have been not necessarily what you thought they would be, the importance of the work hasn't diminished at all. And then the people's desire to do the types of things you're talking about hasn't diminished. You just have to find a new way to operate in this environment. And that's what business is all about. I mean, you have to continue to do that. So for me, it's been, you know, when I thought I would probably be running full speed ahead, it's actually been what I say, I often use the term, so I feel like I've been having to call audibles and getting blitzed the whole time. So the game plan is still to score touchdowns and to try to do that. But, you know, unfortunately, you know, there are needs that have to adjust and there are plans have to adjust, and you have to cater to what people feel most comfortable in. And that's been what I've spent most of my time doing, is finding new ways to interact with people, especially in real estate. It's a very much a person-to-person type of interaction, and a trust building scenario has to be created. And it's been difficult in this time, but there are people who are now learning how to operate in the new normal. And I'll turn it over to Will so I don't over talk anybody else.
No, I mean, I think much of what you said is spot on. It really, for me, is about people. And when I think about the investment and the dollars that you have at risk, I signed a purchase agreement for the distro property, and it was less than 30 days old when COVID hit. And 30 days after purchasing 3 lots on the corner in Germantown, Salemtown, I lost 75% of my business. So as an investor, that's not cutting you off at the knees, it's cutting you off at the waist. But the first priority is people. And so I have to go back to, what does it take for the people who make the vision possible to be safe and to have what they need? And once that happens, how do we rebuild from there? But quite frankly, I think everything that has been said, fits the bill. And one of the next conversations I'm initiating is what does not rebuilding, but what is reactivating, not after COVID, but just in the midst of COVID, where you've tapped through the resources and the rainy day funds and those things that you've done to keep people employed, to make people safe, and you still have a viable business, but you've gone through what would have been your new cash injection. And so I think a lot of the funds that are being raised and passed around should really take a hard look at how businesses that are considered essential, that have kept people employed, get the kind of support that helps them activate to get back to the execution of a 3 to 5 year business plan. Certainly that's personal, but I think it's part of what we see as like the work that COVID has required us in terms of pivots. Our pivot at the local distro has been about moving to something that keeps employees safe so they don't carry any infection home to their children. So we close the inside, and we've served groceries, food from online, and still provide those services through a takeout and carry out model. But now the inside is available for private functions. So a bank that wants to bring its employees together who have been away from the office, and they all get tested, they all check the temperature, and they have a private happy hour here. Or a group that is traveling in the city that wants to do a private brunch on a Saturday morning. I mean, we're still doing business, but having to pivot and be creative about how we do it. And that does allow us to protect employees and making sure that they remain in a safe and healthy environment. As it relates to the development space, I think a lot has slowed down a lot, but the key projects that need to close up, just working to execute what's necessary to make sure they move along, and that you don't lose the time value of money in the middle of developments, because it's essential to the bottom line in the budget.
Awesome. Wow, that's a lot. And honestly, there's a lot of nuggets in there, but one of my favorites was brunch. So I really do miss brunch. So if you would drop your local distro, drop the website in the chat so that everyone has that, because it's good to hear that you're opening up a safe space for people to come and do brunches and lunches and things privately and safely. So if anybody wants to invite me to a private lunch or brunch at local distro, I'm available. I will clear my calendar for it. So you talked a bit about pivoting, Will, and Karen, tell me how maybe you've pivoted a little bit. How have you had to pivot during the pandemic?
Mainly pivoting for us was really taking a step back and seeing what are other ways that we can serve our clients that aren't direct placements or contract work. What else can we help them with in the D&I space, or just, in the staff and recruiting space? So those were things that we really had to think about and figure out how we could add some other things to our processes. All of 2020 was supposed to be networking, building our pipeline, having events. So all of that got slashed, and now we're in this virtual world. One thing I can say, the virtual world does open us up to the entire world, the entire United States, and we can pull client candidates from everywhere. But everyone doesn't love the virtual space. And the virtual space was cute and cool in March and April, May and June. It's like, I don't want to get on camera again. So it's really, now it's kind of figuring out what's the next thing. So me and my marketing team have been working on how do we still, engage and grab candidates in their attention in this very cluttered online space, right? Everybody's doing a virtual this or that, their job, their trainings. It's too much. So really trying to pivot and figure out how do we still attract candidates, because the clients aren't the problem. Now they're knocking like, hey, can we? So now it's like being able to get those candidates and get their attention from all the noise that's going around. So that's our biggest two things is pivoting, is kind of figuring those things out.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely drop your company in the chat as well, because if somebody's looking for a tech job, Black or Latinx or women, if you're looking for a tech job, right, they definitely should go to MinTech Agency to get jobbed up. Betty, what about you? How have you had to pivot? How have you all had to pivot? I mean, you said that you realized early on it wasn't going to be digital, but what else happened?
Yeah, I feel like there's been waves of change over time. One of the first things we did in order to be proximate was we kind of turned everything inside out and created a services hub outside of our office. Because the town was sort of a wasteland, we kind of just took over this big old parking lot. And every morning we'd get the cords out, and the laptops out, and the food out, and we would be out there for people. In the early weeks, our vans, which would ordinarily be crisscrossing the city 24/7 to take people to and from work, became food procurement and delivery vehicles, keeping us again proximate to wherever our people were living across the city. And then we kept pulling in dollars and giving it out to people to either pay if they were in a rental situation, or to buy them tents if they were in an encampment, to really just be food, water, basics, survival. Whereas we had always been about really this long-term success. It was really just about really a survival mentality. We also in the early days had this idea that we would create a disinfecting arm of our property enterprise. And so Props creates employment for people by hiring them to do our lawn, our commercial clean. And so we started getting into disinfecting. The way we did that was we hired a disinfecting entrepreneur to come to our space, and then we turned him into our mentor, and it really built out our own. So that's been something that we've been working on that we didn't see coming. And then I think just really, going to the fire in terms of all the outfitting and retrofitting that we needed to do. And we just kind of keep doing more. And we did, like, we bought power inverters for our vans, and then hooked up HEPA air filters with the power inverters so that the vans would be getting clean, refreshed air all the time. We've just made an order this week for 5 new big machines that we're gonna install for more air filtration. So just kind of keeping our eyes on that focus as we go. And then a weird thing is happening where we're actually growing. And so we had a proposal in the midst of the pandemic for growth into other Tennessee cities. So that's happening. And so that's another sort of, I don't know if that qualifies as a pivot, but it's something we're doing.
Absolutely. And it's just good to hear what you're doing. I will say that if you want to go to Memphis, then we'll talk about it, and I'd be happy to help shepherd you there. Also,
I want to go to Memphis. The state told us we're going to Chattanooga, so we can talk. Yeah.
We could also talk about Chattanooga. I have a couple of good spots there as well. And then we'll put in the chat that Local Distro is open to donate or can discount anything that they offer. I will say that he has the most giving spirit, right? I can speak personally for Will and Ed for one of the social enterprises that I run, Junior CEO. They are both the most giving people, and just giving of time and thought leadership and things wherever they can, and using their skills for good. Not that Karen, not that you're not, I'm not saying that you're not, you definitely are. I just know thus far, they've been super champions of everything, and then they're the ones I have to put it out to. So definitely take him up on that. Karen, what has been a surprise for you? What's the biggest surprise that you've had in this pandemic?
Let me say, it was definitely working from home, more companies being flexible from work from home. That whole thing was refreshing. It's good because a lot of people want to stay where they are. I think a lot of companies close themselves off by just looking in their local area or wanting people to relocate. I've been in my city for 10, 15 years. I don't want to relocate, but they're the perfect candidate. And so you miss that for that. So that, and let's see, the biggest surprise, companies still hiring. Some of my clients, even through the midst, because I do have some retail clients, and the retail for those smaller stores, we're still hiring. And so I have an insurance company client. And so of course they stopped hiring because people stopped driving. And so just really the clients that were, the difference between the clients, the ones that were still hiring, then the ones that, stopped hiring, candidates just being afraid of, what's next. That was surprising, well, not really surprising, but I guess, a little bit to say, hey, you could get, a promotion, more money, and it's like, nah, I'm gonna stay where I am. So a lot of that was really, really surprising. just COVID in itself was surprising. The wave of it and the length of time. You know, I've heard so many things that come through, the US, and it's here and it's gone. But months and months of the same thing was definitely the biggest surprise, that it went this far. Excuse me.
It never wants to end. It's like the song that never ends. It just
Oh,
keeps
yes.
going.
Yeah.
Going. Ed, what's the biggest surprise for you, Edward?
There's a lot of them. I think the biggest surprise is really that when you think about something as at the magnitude of COVID, right, of having a pandemic and an outbreak in this sense, and the biggest surprise is that there are two, if not multiple worlds, right, that we're really living in. You can have a conversation with one person and, it's the world is ending. Like, I mean, in every factor of their life, they're being impacted, right? Whether it's somebody dealing with the illness, whether it's somebody having lost their job, whether it's all the different types of uncertainty that we've mentioned, whether they're somebody who may have had a job, but they're trying to be a work from home parent now, not necessarily having the amount of technological capacities that they have, and now they have to figure out how to split time between being a parent full-time and still working full-time just to not risk losing a job in the economic climate. To people who you talk to them, they're like, man, I'm really glad I'm able to spend so much time at home now. I have so much freedom back. I've got time back. I'm enjoying this. Their pay scale is not adjusted, and or they're reaping some type of benefit in this situation. And so just having those complete polar opposites, both from an individual standpoint, and then also realizing it's the same for businesses. Unfortunately, Will was able to weather the storm, I'm hoping, and doing a great job in pivoting and being very apt and proactive about ways to do things. But there's been a prolonged period of time where there are businesses that rely on customers and people bringing and that activity, right, being brought to them, and they're suffering. And then you have other businesses that just so happen to be more technology driven, or just I'm somewhat of a benefactor being listed as essential. And so they're able to keep moving through this economy, even if they are somewhat impacted. It's just nowhere near as significant. And just realizing that. And my personal experience that I think was the biggest surprise was going to banks and investors and having a conversation about a certain type of acquisition property. And they were more, well, we're going to hold tight because we need to know what's coming next, right? We're just going to take a little bit of time to see where things are. But then you go to a seller or somebody who has something listed, and you try to explain to them, hey, this is a difficult time. There's a lot of uncertainty. Can we work through extending this deal out? Can we look at what a different type of scenario is? What can I do to incentivize you to stick with me? Because clearly it's something I'm interested in making happen. And they're like, oh no, like I don't. And it's like you can't say you don't know about COVID, right? Like it's all over the news, it's over there, and understanding that there are ripple effects, right? The city and planning and different departments, I can't move as fast as I would have liked to through this situation, and just stonewall. I don't see how that's supposed to affect this. And, so people really having alternate realities. I think that was the biggest surprise for me. I mean, I know we know there are different realities in day to day from anybody you talk to, but for it to be something so significant to hit so hard, and then some people just not reel from it at all or be adjusting to it at all was a surprise for me.
Absolutely. I think that this is just the craziest thing. And I find myself, I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I said, there are so many times where I think, oh, you know what, let's just go hang out. We used to just go to the park, or maybe we'd grab food and go do the thing. And you realize, oh, we're not going in anywhere to eat because, well, it's cootie season. So that is probably the biggest pivot for me. It's a lot. Will, let's compare and contrast, right? When we all go into December and we're looking at, or probably start the quarter before, but we're thinking about the new year and we're excited, and 2020 is going to be amazing and we're going to do all these things. And then the sky falls apart, right? Like it just drops, everything falls out of the sky on you. Compare and contrast a little bit. What did you think 2020 was going to be? And we kind of heard where you are, but going into this, what did you think? Where were you going to be? What was the goal? What was the dream?
Well, like anything, when you start a new business, because the distro was started in 2019, so we expected the first year to be challenging as we just stood things up. But we went into the second year expecting, oh, it will be well. And so honestly, previous November and December are tough on markets and restaurants, but we did pretty well. So we went into January and February working with a strong team, continuing to add people. And then using the time to train people in the winter because it's slower. And then the tornado happened and we became central hub for NEA House as well as the distro and giving out 800 meals. I mean, we gave away everything we had because we were certain the tornado will, it's a week, it'll be over, you know? And before you knew it, I mean, it went from bad to worse. And so sourcing product to go to Memphis or Birmingham to get the same goods that I could go to the near the Titan Stadium to get previously, like just a huge challenge that happened in the matter of 60 to 90 days. One that started with benevolence, and we want everyone to have what they need, no one to go without in March, still reeling in April, and then when the ball dropped in May, it just took the wind out of the sail. But I think, again, I go back to the human capital and people who are prepared to weather the storm with you. That's what's made it possible. The friends that call and say, listen, I don't know what you need, but I know this organization that's willing to help and someone else that's willing to partner. And if you can put 2 on the table, they can put 5 on the table, and together you can have 3.5 what you need. So those are the kinds of things that it's become, but we really expected it to be a strong year of growth that would continue on what was a very strong November and December for a market/restaurant. But it didn't turn out that way. But I'm grateful for the city of Nashville and the kind of support that we have gotten while we continue to make our own injections into the business to make sure it stays alive, because it is serving a purpose that's far greater than just food and goods. It's really supporting an ecosystem of small businesses that they have their own challenges. And so part of our work has been encouraging those small businesses to stay around, because it's easier to keep going than it is to start, stop, and then start again. So I think we've been able to keep about 40% of those businesses in tow and walk through this together.
Awesome. It sounded like some loaves and fishes. That's what I heard in there, right? Little loaves and fishes. Okay. All right. So here's the question. Here's the big question for everybody. 2021. What do we have? What are we looking at? Let's just go ahead and make some predictions. We don't know. We don't know what it is, but we pray that we come out better in 21 than we did in 20. So what do you think? What do you think, Betty? What's 21 looking like for you?
I think the optimistic view would be that that we're effective in bringing a transformative message to our community, a transformative message around people being able to have new beginnings, to recreate their lives in a positive way. And maybe the devastation of the pandemic kind of strips away a lot of stuff that allows that vision to kind of come to a community at large. I think that our people continue to face just fear and contempt, and that is the lay of the land. But there is something about a disaster, a pandemic, that does kind of get things down to the studs in a way. And then where are we? Who are we? What are we building here? So I'm not an optimistic person, but if I were, that would be the vision for 2021. And in the meantime, I think we've wrestled with our identity as a nonprofit organization. We had always been emphatically strengths-based, saying that, not trying to play the po person kind of card and say this pitiful thing or anything like that. We'd be like, these are great people. We are working with great people. You want to know how great folks are. And COVID kind of made it, we all were really pitiful, it was just rough, and we had to speak the voice of need. And I think coming into 2021, we need to find our footing. Can we return to that voice of strength, that voice of wonderful people who are your next opportunity? Or do we need to continue with that more, so less of a social justice view or voice and more of a social need kind of voice. And I don't know the answer to that. Yes, I want to do social justice strength things, but we'll see where we go with that.
Awesome. Awesome. Karen, what about you? 21. What do you think?
You know what? As Betty was speaking, I was thinking the pandemic, I know it was horrible, life loss, and just a complete shakeup of our lives, but there were a lot of good things that came out of it, like actually slowing down and spending time with your family or figuring out like how to pivot. I think a lot of entrepreneurs got a crash course in entrepreneurship with this, because you had to really think about how to pivot, how to continue to serve your customer, your clients, and continue to make money during this pandemic. So I definitely think it was a great time to learn. And so 2021, I'm hoping to take what we learned, because in the beginning, when the pandemic hit, we had to let go of like our recruiter. And then as everything else started happening, now we're able to rehire a recruiter and get a marketing team. And so I'm hoping that we can continue the mission of MinTech and really hone in on how to be a resource for the candidates virtually. Now that we have this new virtual platform, and hopefully next year everything goes back to normal, people are out and about and they're not just so tied down to their computers, and it's not feel like a job to get online and to do something virtually, so that we can now input, add those things into our model that makes more sense. So adding some of the things that we had to do now into our mix and our flow, so that we can better, serve our clients and our customers. I'm just hoping 2021 is better, because I honestly thought 2020, I was one of the ones that was like, oh, this is going to be a magical year. 2020, oh, it's going to be amazing. And it started horrible. I mean, I think I take mine all the way back to COVID. COVID was like the first thing for 2020 for me. I was like, it just went down for me. The whole situation, I know it's so off topic, but that's what started the whole roller coaster ride for me. And it was just like, 2020 was not the year that I had imagined. I thought it was going to be a magical year. I thought like stuff was going to pop out the sky. I really did. I thought it was going to be something like magical.
I think we all misread that. I think we all thought it was going to be a magical year, but we got our signals crossed up a little bit.
Yeah. This was the Y2K that they was talking about, I think. Y2K, right. Nothing happened. Okay. So 2020 came, this was like, this was what you was expecting. Yeah.
Right. They were like, psych, it's 2020, not 2000.
Right.
Ed, what about it? 21.
Yeah. I think, when Betty was talking, there's a lot of things that jumped out at me, but I think, I'm a cynical person too. We talk about optimism, I'm a cynical person too, but I'm also a confident person, right? I think that's the thing. And I think for 2021, I feel that a lot of things that I had foreseen for 2020 that still make sense, or with a different lens and different type of contemplation will still come to fruition. But I think the approach and the way that I do those things will be different. And honestly, the people that I do them with will be different, right? The processes and the inclusion of how I do things will be different than I really thought it would be at first. And I say that because, a lot of people I've heard talk about, having to do so many things virtually and work from home and work remote. And, Pills Development, we have 8 people now. We had 9 going into the year. We actually had staffed up thinking, the whole 2020 thing, the higher you fly, the longer the fall and the harder the crash. But so, we've weathered the storm in a sense, and we're in a decent position to care for with what I would consider our more traditional business model. But one of the things our workforce had always been remote and/or specifically dedicated to a site. So there were some people that had to adjust to working from home, but it wasn't in the same sense of a traditional office, right? And so for us going into 2020, it was, we're going to find a great space to where our team can be in one spot and can congeal, right? Be within 6 feet of each other, right? The whole deal. I don't know if that'll be something that comes back, quite honestly, because of one, of course, the environment, but I think also the fact that it allows us to be leaner and really focus on doing things a different way. And I mentioned doing things with different people. You know, in 2019, there were a lot of folks that were, I think when the getting is good, you know, a lot of people want to get. And I think, you know, there were a lot of folks that said, well, we're great. We want to see this happen. We want it to come to fruition. We want to help you. We'll be there when you get these things lined up. Let us know. And even before COVID going into 2020, you know, there was an opportunity where things were being presented and rolled out, and, you know, the words didn't match actions. And the reality of that started to set in before COVID. And then of course, COVID happened, and, you know, you can't really hold anybody accountable for something they said prior to that, because the magnitude in which things shift is amazing. But for me, I think about that being a pivot towards more focused on an individual basis of how we can form a partnership that really sees a vision, right? And the types of things that you want to do, versus saying, hey, I know you have some funds and you like me and you believe in me, let's do this thing together. You know, it was much more return based, which is how the market works a lot of times in real estate. But when you have a mission and you allow people to join you in a mission, when times are hard, I think Will said it, you know, the people factor, the human capital. When times are hard, those same people are still there. They're still trying to figure out how to accomplish that goal because they believed in that goal, right? They didn't just look at the metrics or the bottom line and what they were going to get back. And so for me, that's just changing my perspective and how I approach a few things. So 2021 will be a more diligent year because it has to be to make things come to fruition. But you know, I'm just going to extend the timeline on a few things that I saw happening in 2020. So stay tuned, right? And I think 2021, a lot of people will embrace things as a newer version of normal. And I think a lot of people will adjust.
Absolutely. Will, what about it? 21?
Well, I am the serial optimist, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. But I do believe that I'm doing a talk this week for University of Tennessee at Chattanooga on passion-driven profits and how to experience success across several sectors. But I'm really speaking to entrepreneurs in the next generation about beginning with the things that you're passionate about. And I liken it to a captain that will go down on the sinking ship because it's his or her ship. And that's what I think about when I think about entrepreneurship, is that when you create a business and you say to the community, you can depend on me for this product or service, it really does require you to live it. And so that's the way I think about 2021, that in spite of how challenging 20 has been, to the degree that I want to first finish this year as strong as possible. And some of that's meant working in spaces and teaming up with people that never would have been an option. So I think I look forward to that continuing in 2021, that some of the purposes that didn't seem like they were aligned began to align as we looked at what the need was and how, again, the 2 things that I can contribute go with the 3 things you can contribute, and we can make a collective difference where neither of us have what we need apart, but together we can make the impact. So I think 2021 will have that and that at a greater degree. That's what I'm hoping. But I also look forward to being able to, I believe in stretch assignments for all team members. And so as a result of 20 being the way it has been, a lot of people have picked up skills a lot faster than they ever would. I mean, team members who just said, look, I'll do it. I'll learn it. I'll throw my hand up. So I'm looking forward to that bearing more fruit, because it will give me time back and it will give them opportunity. So I think everyone wins in that scenario. Even if it doesn't mean we have more business, it does mean someone's prepared better, whether they continue to serve here or go somewhere else and contribute and build. So that's the kind of capital that I am counting most right now. I think sometimes when things are moving so fast, it's hard to release trust or stretch people. But I think that's one of the things that we've done in this season, and I look forward to it paying off more and more in 2021. But I'm careful not to look that far so soon. I'm right now making 90-day projections, measuring at 30, measuring at 60, and changing whatever needs to happen at both of those points. And just really keeping the team on board, understanding that as well is a big part.
Awesome. 20 was something. It really was. It was something, one for the books. I think this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you all's time. If there are no questions, I think we're right at 1. Yeah, we're about 2 minutes shy. If there are any questions out there or anything else that you all have that you may, any thoughts or anything else?
I'll jump in here. I think one thing that 2020 has done, and thinking about it as a professional, you know, having started my business in Nashville and having been on pretty much of a consistent uptick, I took the responsibility of being responsible for people who work with and for me very, very heavily. It made me very anxious about hiring my first employee. But I think this year I really learned what it meant, right? Because the level of uncertainty that was felt this year and the amount of people that were there and the amount of, just like I said, audibles you had to take on, I think has been really impactful for me to not, I don't think I took a lot for granted to begin with, but it just really drove home to be appreciative of the things you have when you do have certain types of things going. So I just wanted to share that just for whoever eventually sees this and just for you all. You know, I understand the hat and the burden you have to carry when you have other people's lives and their livelihoods, right, in your hands, and actually lives now when you think about safety. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Ed. Laurel, did you have a question?
Well, I have a comment and a question. First of all, you all are amazing. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for taking the time on a busy day like this to speak to us. I found it to be very encouraging, and just lots of good nuggets in there. I guess my only question would be, you know, many of you talked about keeping the morale up during this time of your team, and keeping them informed of what's going on. I guess if we have just a second, I'd love to hear, like, what have you all done to keep them informed, and how have you attempted to keep the morale up as well?
Any specific person, or you just everybody?
I think just any of you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak to that a little bit. Because we early on, we made a decision and we said we had to do two things. One is strengthen and deepen the bonds with the people we serve, and the other is strengthen and deepen the bonds with one another. And so having kind of set that, and then it was about certain regimens, like a religious commitment to a weekly staff meeting, and also intentionally bringing meaning to those staff meetings. So we do prompts where people think of it in advance, and then we all share, you know, we even do a haiku now and then, or different kind of stories, creative prompts where we are enjoying one another's company, but also being reflective through stories on our experience of COVID, experience of the related things. We also have a daily COVID update internally that is done by one of our team members to just kind of keep beating the drum of safety. But I think that on the whole, we've really embraced that need to be authentically communicating with one another on a regular basis, and it's really significantly been felt, I think, by us.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your question, Laurel. We are going to close because Karen's jumping off, and it is 1 o'clock. And we promised everyone 1 o'clock. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank my guest. I want to thank everyone that's watching and that will watch. And this was amazing. And I want everyone to have an amazing week.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, y'all.
Sure.
Hi, Laurel. Okay. Let me just